God's story, your life. Unfolding short stories.
Despite having money and outward achievements, Derek Mason discovered that none of it satisfied his deeper need for meaning or connection with God. He realized that simply being a good person in worldly terms wasn't what God desired. Rather, God wanted a radical shift of heart and a genuine relationship, a transformation that material success alone could never provide.
So I grew up knowing God, knowing Christ. I grew up in the church. I knew a lot about God, or I knew stories at least, but I did not have an intimate relationship with him. I ended up getting into business and did really well for myself, but I would definitely say I was a worldly Christian and trying to kind of have a foot in both sides of the pool, I guess you could say. Kind of went to church basically Christmas and Easter. And I eventually, through success, I took a step back and asked myself, how does it feel to be at this place? And the answer terrified me. The answer was empty. I thought I was somebody that had good ethics and morals, but that wasn't what God was looking for. God was looking for something radically different. It started me on a path because I basically prayed to him. I said, if I'm not where I'm supposed to be, then to take me out of this place and put me where I was meant to be. And that started me on a 2-year run that was really ultimately destroying all my idols. It took away everything from my health to finances to even personal relationships and stuff. And I found all the things that I had really put my identity in had driven me to a place where I was just completely empty. I was consumed by darkness and hopelessness and failure. Men have this pride of being successful or being providers and so forth. And I had done that to one extreme, but all of a sudden it went to the far other extreme. And basically I was like, I have no value. I have no purpose. And all I'm doing is like a leech. I'm sucking off of all the people that I care about. I kept hearing in my voice, just take your life, do everybody a favor and just take your life. At first I was like, that's ridiculous. But eventually over and over again, I started getting validations, and eventually it started being a pretty valid option that I started exploring. And that's when I knew I was in trouble. It was in that time that I ended up praying to God again. I said, if you give me another chance at life and you free me from these bonds, this burden that is crushing me, then I promise I'll live my life your way. I had no idea what that even meant. And the very next day, he ended up doing an incredible miracle, very clearly showed me that he had heard my prayer and that it was time to start learning how to walk with him. That was really the start of my ministry, that it showed me through experience how we can come into the power and the victory truly that we have in Christ, because he took away that burden. Some of it was immediate, like a switch, but a lot of it was also a journey where it continued to show me how to walk with him. So the very next day, I ended up it was a warehouse. I was in sales and we had product. I was in such a bad place that I could not even wait for the delivery truck just hours later to deliver what it was. All my salespeople were kind of waiting to be able to get it. And so I had to go to the place and pick it up. So I go to this truck warehouse, and as I'm walking up to the will call, I see these 2 sparrows flying around right above me. One of them just drops to the ground dead. And I'm like, that was weird. And I see its feet are sticking out. It reminded me of the cartoons when I was younger and stuff. It's laying on the ground. The other one kind of goes to the empty truck that was backed up to the warehouse. And I kept walking. I went over to the will call. I put in my order. I said that I was here to put in my name in. And immediately 2 other sparrows flying right in front of me. I mean, they're almost right over me. And one of them also drops to the ground dead, feet up in the air. And I'm like, that's the weirdest thing ever. I went running over to the other one just to make sure that it wasn't the same bird, like these weren't trick birds kind of messing with me or anything like that. I saw the other one was still there. This one's now dead. And the partner to that second 2 is now like chirping at me and stuff. And I start yelling back. I'm like, I didn't do it. It's your friend. What did you do to this thing? And eventually I kind of just brushed it off. I told the guy that brought out my shipment, I said what happened, because I was worried it was going to be like a toxic leak in the warehouse. I'm like, well, I should tell somebody. And he just said, that's weird. So that's what I thought. Anyways, a couple of days are going by and I kept feeling that God was saying, look in the Bible, there's something really important here, biblical. And the whole time I'm like, that's ridiculous. I'm not looking in the Bible. And after literally about 10 different things that had happened, that kept telling me, look in the Bible, I finally called the only person I knew that actually had any kind of real biblical knowledge, and that was my mom. She was in Chicago. I was in Arizona. And so she was asleep. It was 10 o'clock my time in Arizona. It's midnight in Chicago. And she goes, Derek, I'll call you tomorrow. Because I'm asking, I'm like, is there anything in the Bible that talks about 2 sparrows falling to the ground dead or anything like that? And she goes, I'll call you tomorrow. And so she did. And she quoted me Matthew 10:28. And that's where it says, do not fear those who can destroy the body, but not destroy the soul. Are not 2 sparrows sold for a penny, and even the hairs of your head are all numbered. So therefore, not even a sparrow will fall to the ground apart from the will of your Father. And even the hairs in your head are all numbered. So therefore, you are worth more than many sparrows. At that point, my whole life changed. I realized that God had heard my prayer, had answered it. And at that point, then I started my journey on walking with him, and he showed up.
Matthew 10:29-31 reminded Derek that not even a sparrow falls without God's knowledge, and that we're of far greater value. That's the reassurance he needed in his darkest moment, to know that he was seen and treasured by God. If you're struggling today, let this encourage you. He sees you too. We recently featured Derek on episode 100 of the Manly with Andy podcast. That's where today's story is from. And if you want to hear the full interview, check the Apple or Spotify link to that episode in the show notes. Meredith will have another page in the unfolding for you on Friday.